I'm John Mabey, TV and film historian and archivist. Thank you for tuning into the Channel Hopper podcast, a deep dive into the world of TV and film with special celebrity guests, with a new episode every Friday. We discuss all things TV and film related, and our guests get the opportunity to play 3 of their favourite themes that mean something to them. We'll be taking a deep dive into what the world of sitting in front of the box growing up meant to them. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you've enjoyed the journey so far, why not leave a review? It all helps. So without further ado, let's get on with the show and meet this week's celebrity guest.
It's cold outside, there's no kind of atmosphere. I wanna know more or less. Let me fly far away from here. Far, far, far in the sun, sun, sun. I want to lie shipwrecked in comatose.
Welcome to another edition of the Channel Hopper podcast, hosted by me, John Mabey, a TV and film obsessed fan, archivist, television historian, and general nuisance. I am joined this week by an award-winning writer who is responsible for one of the most iconic sitcoms of all time, Red Dwarf. His back catalogue also includes A Kick Up the 80s, The Cannon and Ball Show, and Spitting Image. Still working extremely hard in the world of writing, his new book, Sin Bin Island, is available now at all good retailers. I am honoured to be joined by the one and only Mr. Doug Naylor. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, John. It's lovely to be here.
Well, do you know what? It's lovely to have you here. Doug, tell us a little bit about your backstory. Where did you grow up? Where did you come from?
I was born in Denton in Manchester, but brought up in Eccles in Manchester. My dad had a TV shop there. I went to school in a school opposite Manchester Cathedral.
I mean, what was school like for you? Was writing there for you? You know, was it something that you were always doing?
It was interesting that one of my favorite lessons was composition,
Right.
where we were given a title like Yellow, and you were then allowed to write anything you wanted, providing it was on the subject yellow. And I really enjoyed doing that. And then one day my mum asked me what I was doing, and I told her I was writing composition. She said, I've got a good story. And she told me this story about a woman on a diet is in a coffee shop. She's having tea without milk. She hasn't eaten hardly anything for a couple of days. And a woman comes and sits opposite and says, "Do you mind if I sit down?" And she had 2 huge cream cakes. So she says, "Yes, of course." So the woman eats the first cream cake, drinks the coffee, and then leaves. And the woman on the diet is staring at this lonely old cream cake and thinks, "What am I going to do?" And she goes, "Oh, no one's looking. What the hell?" She picks up the cream cake and is halfway through eating it when the first woman returns with a second cup of coffee. So that was the story my mum told me. And I thought, hey, that's a really good story. I'm going to write that as my composition. So I went in, and the teacher loved it and read it out in class. And I got 9 out of 10. Although because I crossed some lines out, I was marked down by 1. So rewriting was being punished. And then the following day, Steve Goulden, a friend of mine, brought in the Sunday Post where that exact story had been written the week. So my mum had just told me, I'd written it down, and yeah. So I enjoyed the glory of the day. That was great.
But from a young age, did you have quite an absorbing mind? So did you take opportunity wherever you turned as a writer?
Well, we were kind of confined to what we could write. And so the only thing that we were allowed to write was composition. And then eventually, I don't know why this happened, our English teacher left and he was replaced by our PE teacher who taught us English for the best part, I think, of a year. And all my essays, I always got then 16 out of 30. And it didn't matter what I wrote, to the extent where eventually I started to write quite outrageous things to see if they would make any difference to my mark. And of course, it didn't because he wasn't reading any of it. He just decided I was a 16 out of 30 guy. And that's what I got every essay.
Oh, and in terms of a televisual point of view, because that's kind of
Yeah.
why we're here,
Yeah.
what are sort of things were you absorbing growing up in the 60s and 70s on the box?
Well, there were great sitcoms like Porridge and Fawlty Towers. They were
Mm,
two favorites. But the thing that kind of sparked everything off was when I saw an article in the Daily Express which said this guy had never written before, and he'd written this sitcom called Paradise Island, which was
hmm
a bit of a rip-off of Gilligan's Island, but he'd never written before, and it was on TV tonight. And I read this article and I thought, wow, I had no idea it was so easy to get stuff on TV. You just write the script, you set it up, and it goes on TV. I mean, obviously, it's got to be pretty good, but then looking at the sitcoms around at the time, apart from the few classic ones, I thought actually the standard's not that good. So I went to the pub that night and said this to my friends. And Rob Grant was there, one of my friends, and he said, and I said, I'm going to write a sitcom, because this seems like a pretty cool way to make a living because I was at Liverpool University reading psychology, but not enjoying it. It was too much mathematics for me. My little brain couldn't cope. So Rob said, I'll give you a hand. And he was also at Liverpool University doing not so well in psychology too. And so we wrote this sitcom and sent it off to the BBC. And a few weeks later, it was returned, rejected, but they said we wrote mildly amusing dialogue.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
okay, so it was sort of like from thinking, hey, we're going to have our own TV series any minute, to, well, no, that's not we right. Mildly amusing dialogue. And then a few weeks later, we're both kicked out along with a third of our year. So then it was okay. This is what I want to do. I want to write sitcoms.
Mm. Now, Doug, you were originally going to be a guest on our sister podcast, the 80s Archive podcast, and I have stolen you for
Yeah.
the Channel Hopper podcast. And this is the first time Doug was made aware of this evening. He had no say in the matter, but I feel a little bit out of order by doing that. And as is the wont of the 80s Archive podcast, we traditionally ask our guests to bring in 5 tracks from the 1980s that are significant or mean something to them. I think it's only fair, Doug. Shall we play a little bit of Led Zeppelin?
Well, why not? Track I chose because it was kind of like the end of the era for Zeppelin. John Bonham had died, and I think they were still in the charts early 80s.
Mm.
And they were such a huge band for me in the 70s. It was strange because my dad had this TV shop and he didn't sell records because he could never work out what would chart. And for some reason, he was sent 100 albums by mistake, which he had to return. But to make it up to him, who had ever sent them, whichever company sent, they said, "Oh, you can keep 4." So he said to me, "Go in and choose any 4 albums you want." And so that was Zeppelin was one, Black Sabbath, yes, ELP.
Oh,
It was
wow.
it was a good day that day.
Yeah. um, tell us what university was like, and did that open up your mind a little bit more to what was going on in the world?
It opened up my mind to, oh, this is freedom.
Mm,
We can kind of do what we want. No one's in charge of us anymore. So there was all that. And then there was the excitement of doing psychology because I thought it was going to help me understand people. And instead, it was doing tests to electrocute goldfish so they would swim from one side of the tank to the other, doing rat mazes, and then doing chi-square tests to prove the statistics were significant or not, all of which I started to fade out fast with all the maths because I didn't realize at the time, but I am numerically dyslexic. So that was just awful. So I then sort of, although I attended, I started to look for other things to do other than, go out to the pub and drink too much beer. And that was comedy. And I sort of pursued that quite very enthusiastically, trying to work out how to do it because there was no way you could go back then. There were no courses, and there were very few books. There was one book called Malcolm Hulke Writing for Television, and that was it. One of the key things he said was when you create characters, yeah, every character has something called a trait. And if you want to establish a trait, for example, meanness, you have to give three examples of meanness, and then the audience will know this character is mean.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking at the time, but if you want to establish a murderer, do you have to, does he have to commit three murders? I reckon people will probably get it with just one.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was the best book at the time. So I kind of pursued my heroes and then read about what they liked and then followed their heroes. And so that became a kind of education, I guess.
And who were your heroes growing up?
At the time, the biggest one was Woody Allen.
Okay.
Um, and I bought a book about Woody Allen, which talked about who his influences were, writing S.J. Perelman, Groucho Marx, Bob Hope, and then read all sorts of books on them to try and work out how he did it. And then went
Mm.
to see his movies 20 plus times.
And from a more serious side, who featured for you in terms of science fiction writing? Were there people like Asimov and
Yeah,
Moorcock and
yeah,
Arthur
yeah,
C.
yeah, yeah.
Clarke?
Yeah. But this was more pleasure, at the time. It wasn't ever that this time that you could harness science fiction and do a science fiction comedy show. That was
Mm.
different universe.
Yeah. I mean, you're never going to take an Asimov on holiday with you, are you?
Well, no, but you're never going to think I want to do a comedy show, so let me read some Asimov.
Yeah. That's very true.
You're
That's
not
very
going to
true.
do that. In
Um,
fact, it was Rob and I saw the movie Dark Star,
mhm.
you know, several years later. It was a
Mm.
student film John Carpenter had made about a bunch of oddballs in space with an alien, which was a ball. And they were basically boring one another to death because they told each other all the stories. And we really enjoyed it. And I remember so vividly, we were then going to the pub, standing at the car, about to open the driver's door, and Rob was the other side, peering over the roof. And I said, "It's so mad that no one's made a sitcom like that." And he said, "Yeah, it is, isn't it?" We both got in the car, drove off, and didn't have a conversation about science fiction comedy for probably 2, 3 years. Um, yeah, so we did go, actually, why don't we do that? Yeah,
Yeah.
we say that
But
then.
but history was almost made that night.
It was almost made. Yeah, the
Yeah.
seed was sown. The seed
Mm.
was sown. Yes.
But it was sat on for a
It,
few
it
years.
was just not
Yeah.
watered for a bit. Yeah.
Um, so tell us about early radio featured quite heavily for you in the early days. And you did a few sitcoms for radio. Can you talk
Yeah.
us through a few of those?
Yeah. I mean, basically, we'd had this BBC script rejected. We then thought, why don't we write for radio and we'll write a sketch show? So we sent this sketch show off to BBC Radio in London, and they said it was sort of between Radio 3 and Radio 4.
Mhm.
But we had talent, and they were going to put us in touch with the comedy department of BBC Manchester because we lived in Manchester. So we went there and we met a guy called Bob Oliver Rogers, who was developing a show called Comedy First, which
Mm.
was first time comedy writers on radio. And we had several meetings with the kind of the writing team. And then we decided we were going to write a sketch about set in a waxwork museum with Humphrey Bogart speaking in the same way Raymond Chandler wrote his character in The Big Sleep and movies like that. And so we took a week off work, and we each read three different Raymond Chandler novels each to get those similes down. And then we wrote this sketch, and it was the star of the first pilot. The other stuff wasn't that good, and London said, "Look, get those guys, commission them to write half a new pilot, and then from there, they were treated wonderfully. We were given an office in the building, welcomed, and from there, we got all sorts of work. Like, please write a sitcom for this for this comedian called Tom Menard, which we did called Wrinkles, and then there was another one called Wally Who. So it was great, great experience, learning experience. We always wanted to do a sketch show of our own because we felt we were writing for other people. We wrote for Ken Dodd, Little and Large, Bernie Clifton, but we wanted to do our own thing. And our own thing was a sketch show called Cliche. And one of the sketches in that was a thing called Dave Holly, the Space Cadet,
Right.
which turned out to be where we went to start Red Dwarf, where it was the last survivor on a spaceship with a computer. And we did about 3 or 4 of these sketches and then went, right, we want to write a sitcom now. And then let's start with that because it's a kind of an original situation. It won't be like Hitchhikers because it will be character based with 4 guys or several guys trapped on a spaceship. And that was the start of it. Well, I think maybe his peak was in the 70s. I think he's a great songwriter. I think his lyrics are great. Music's great. In fact, I saw him in concert at the Co-op in Manchester about 6 months ago.
Okay.
Absolutely extraordinary. I mean,
Still got it.
Oh, he's still got it. Yeah. If you like Bruce Springsteen, yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
Doug, this is a question we ask every single one of our guests. And to you, sir, you would know no exception. So I'm hoping you won't let me down. So, Mr. Doug Naylor, do you have a ghost story?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to share it with the group?
My dad had a TV shop, and it was the time when TVs had big glass valves. And the glass valves would occasionally blow. So he would rent the TVs or sell the TVs, then they would blow up and people would bring them back and they would go into his workshop and he had 4 or 5 engineers working on these TVs, repairing them. And so we had a workshop. We lived on the flat above the TV shop and the workshop. And this workshop had a black door, completely black swing door. And for whatever reason, it stayed like this. And so if people came through from either direction simultaneously, chaos ensued. So anyway, that was just life. You just accepted it. Then one day, it must have been, I can't remember why, but it was late at night. I went downstairs through the workshop to get something. And as I came to this door, there was an apparition, I guess you would call it, that stood in front of me and was shaking slightly from side to side, and the whole room went icy cold. And I thought, oh my God. And at the time, I have to confess, I was reading a lot of books about ghost stories. Anyway, boom, I thought, oh my God, this is it. And I don't know what made me do it, but I reached out and I touched, because I knew where the light switch was, and I touched the light switch and I realized instantly what had happened. They changed this door and they put a glass square in the middle of it. And what I was looking at was me shaking and my fear making me freezing cold. But if I'd have just run away and never gone back to that location, I would have absolutely sworn I'd seen a ghost.
So you took the rational approach.
Well, I don't know whether it was a rational approach or go away quickly approach.
Yeah. I suppose being as a writer, you have to be reasonably open-minded. Is that something that you believe in? Do you believe in there being more than just flesh, blood, death, finish?
I don't really think about it, that side of it. I did, when I was much younger, late teens and early 20s. Yeah, no, it's honestly not something I think about. Prince,
not the first time chosen on the 80s Archive podcast. Purple Rain, massive, massive record. Tell us why you chose that one, Doug.
I was newly in love, and me and my girlfriend at the time, now my wife and mum of our two children, we went to my parents' cottage and raced around various Welsh roads, listening to that album and adoring it.
Mm. It's
It
a
was
superb album. It's a superb album.
fantastic. Yeah.
Doug, we've arrived. We are here. It's cold outside. There's no kind of atmosphere. Red Dwarf. Now, Red Dwarf for me, Doctor Who has always been my favourite program of all time, and it always will be. But in my top five sits Red Dwarf, and that ain't going anywhere. I love everything about it. And I've got to tell you, my hands down favourite episode of all time is Quarantine.
Aha, right.
Yeah, I still love Quarantine. I think
Yeah.
it's a fan favourite as well, actually, in general. So Red Dwarf, how did that come about?
It came about, we were working on Spitting Image. We'd done a few series, and we wanted to do our own thing,
Mm,
because we never intended to be sketch writers and work for other people. We wanted our own show like Golden Simpson and Clement Lafreniere. That would always been the dream. And so we decided to go to my parents' little cottage in North Wales for a week and write this sitcom, which was going to be based on a sketch we'd written, Dave Hollins, Space Cadet, for Son of Cliche. So off we went with our Amstrad computer. And before this, Bobby J, who had been the head of comedy, radio comedy in London, had wonderfully arranged us a lunch for us with Galton and Simpson. And he
okay.
thought, and I mean, they weren't working together any longer, but they got together and blah, blah, we went for lunch and
Mm,
we were able to ask them questions and blah, blah, blah. One of the questions that we asked was, how did you create Steptoe and Son? And they said, we just started to write two guys walking down a road. We didn't particularly know who they were, whether it was two brothers, two sons, two whatevers. And we wrote a bit of dialogue and, saw whether it was funny or not funny. And then we changed the characters and we eventually stumbled on one was a father and one was a son, and they were rag and bone men. And then we thought, oh, we've got something here. We can see the conflict here, the son being trapped with the father and the father not wanting to leave and blah, 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 blah. And so there we were in North Wales. We went, right, where do we start? We went, we'll do that thing Galton and Simpson did. Instead of two blokes walking down the street, we'll have two blokes walking down a spaceship corridor. We knew we had to wind up with the last human because we had this idea that all the crew die because we wanted the people at the bottom of the ship to become the crew. And so we thought it would be a good idea if we have, and obviously they've got to be opposites for conflict. So one's going to be the last human, the other one's going to be not the last human. So what could he be? Oh, a hologram. Oh, maybe he could die. Okay, one could be a slob, one could be a kind of Jobsworth. Okay, got it. What should we call them? Just let's call them names that from kids in our school, so we won't argue over, going on for years of, well, what about Thompson? What about
mm,
blah, blah. Okay, fine. We just plucked two out of the air, Lister and Rimmer, and off we went. And they were having this argument about this chicken soup and blah 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 blah. And so that was it. We knew we needed more characters. We had this idea that rather than aliens, because we didn't want aliens, we felt that was a cliche, that we would have someone who would evolve from cats rather than apes. And instead of a brilliant computer, we'd have our computer who was formerly brilliant but went senile. And then that was it. And off we went. And it was basically to explain the story of how these characters came to be.
mm,
So we nearly finished it. We struggled a bit with the cat. Did he speak to people? Because he was so vain and sort of into himself. How could there be any dialogue? So we kind of left that a little bit,
mm.
but had most of it down within that week. Went home, finished it, Then met Paul Jackson in the Latchmere pub and said, we've written this, we're just doing a few tweaks on it, but we've written this sitcom, science fiction sitcom. And he went, oh no, don't bother. And we went, what? He said, you'll never sell it. I promise you, you'll never sell it. No company will touch science fiction comedy. It's always expensive, and it'll be impossible to sell. And we went, but it just starts off in a really ordinary way with these two blokes walking down. And he said, well, make sure it's very clear. It's very ordinary at the beginning. So we did. We finished it. And then sent the script to John Lloyd, who we've been working with on Spitting Image, and to Paul Jackson. They both read it, both liked it. For a while, they were going to co-produce it, whatever. But anyway, then John dropped out because of Blackadder, leaving just Paul. Paul took it to the BBC and it was rejected twice.
Right.
First time was we just don't like it, we don't get it, we don't think this is right. He took it back again and said, read it again, you're wrong. And they went, no, we're not. And then I said, he's not pitching it right. Let us go in, we'll pitch it and we'll sell it. So a meeting was arranged with the head of comedy. We went in and he just went, no one will be able to relate to people on a spaceship because people don't live on a spaceship.
Mm.
People want a contemporary situation like a sofa and French windows. And if you started with a sofa and French windows and then it turned out it was on a spaceship, that might help them. And we went, but you don't really have sofas and spaceships, and neither do you have, certainly don't have French windows. Anyway, to be fair to him, although he rejected it again, he did commission us for a new science fiction comedy, which I don't think we ever wrote. And then probably Channel 4 then came in, said they wanted to make it a film on 4, and we went, no thanks. We want it to be a sitcom. It's a sitcom. And then Paul Jackson, just by sheer luck, done a show called Happy Families, written by Ben Elton, in Manchester, and they were looking for something new. They wanted it to be a bit weird because, as they said afterwards, we thought probably it would fail. So we wanted to say at least we were trying something different. He put 3 scripts on their desk and said, I'm not going to tell you, Paul Jackson did, I'm not going to tell you which one I prefer. Very clever. So,
And also, it's quite a feat to have 2 series of the same program in the same year as well. Am I right in thinking that 88, it was series 1 and series 2?
well, it was a weird situation because we went into the studio and there was an electrician's strike. So we rehearsed every show, and then each week it was axed because the electricians were on strike, so we couldn't shoot it.
Right.
Then we go on to the second show. I'm not sure why I suppose it was like, oh, you'd be bored of the first show if you go back and rehearse it again. So we then rehearsed the second show, electrician strike again. And we went through the whole series of rehearsing, blocking, everything. And it gave us an opportunity to go, oh, to work with the guys, to get to know the guys, to hear the thing, to see it blocked. So it was kind of like a great education for us. And then the whole thing was shelved. The sets were stored very cleverly by Peter Risdale Scott, who was head of Manchester, because he thought, well, we can get this back. And then sure enough, it came back. So then it was shot for real. But because we were so much into it, we were then able to write quite quickly a series 2 because we didn't like series 1.
Yeah,
We
okay.
looked really schlocky and not as good as, certainly not as good as we imagined. So
Yeah, I think there was just little subtle differences, like sort of making Holly high def. Well, he's basically a man in a black turtleneck.
well, yes.
Yeah.
Well, originally it wasn't anything at all. It was just a voice like Hal in 2001.
Mm.
And it was Norman just going, I'm funny because of my face. You've got to, you need to put my, and so
Too right, yeah.
we reshot all his audio to get his face, and he was absolutely right.
Jumping forward a little bit, again, I'm just going to have to ask a few fanboy questions that you've probably been asked a million times before. But what happened to the original Crichton? Why was he at the beginning of series 2, then nothing until Robert Llewellyn came in?
Rob didn't want to have any aliens, which I agreed with, and he didn't want to have any robots because his argument was robots, you always have robots in science fiction. We want to do something more interesting. And then after series one, John Lloyd called me and quite rightly pointed out, he said, I think you're a character short here. I think you need one more. And I went, I couldn't agree more, John. I'm trying to persuade Rob to have a robot,
Mm,
just to, make the writing a bit easier. And so we created Crichton.
mm.
David Ross, who we'd worked with in radio in our sitcom Wrinkles, and he was always funny. The audiences just loved him, and he was great in that first episode called Crichton.
That
Uh,
first lot of makeup though was terrifying. In fairness, that
it was terrifying. It took 6 hours to make that as well.
really, really were.
6 hours, yeah, I know. So obviously he wasn't in the rest of the series, and then when we came to series three, we'd made it very clear we wanted to produce the show now because we wanted everything to improve. We wanted the sets to improve, the look to improve, everything. And also, I managed after 6 weeks of wearing him down to persuade Rob to bring Crichton back. The original plan was to get David Ross back, but he was doing, I can't remember what it was doing. It was either Boys from the Black Stuff or something, some huge TV series, and he wasn't available. So we had to cast around. And someone recommended, oh, have a look at Robert Llewellyn because he's playing a robot, nothing like Crichton, in the Edinburgh Fringe.
Right.
So we met Robert, and you can just tell when someone's got comedy bones.
Mm.
And we didn't really know quite what we were going to do with Crichton, but we just thought we want to work with this guy. This guy will fit in. He's got comedy bones, and one of the hilarious things he said was, will I be wearing a mask? Because I'm also doing a couple of things about robots, and it would be great if I was, because then people won't think it's me. And we went, yeah, you will definitely be wearing a mask. Little did he know he was wearing it on and off for the next 35 years.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Why did Lister have his appendix out twice?
Well, there are two arguments there. One is because the stupid writer, i.e., me, forgot, or he did in fact have two sets of appendix, which is
Oh, okay.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's
The
a one
organ.
in three
Yeah.
billion chance of it happening. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Well, I'll leave your viewers to decide.
hey, he gave
Pick
birth to
those two.
twins. Anything's
Yeah,
possible, you know.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, Now, Series 6, as much as I love Quarantine, Series 6 for me is actually my favourite series in terms of consistency, and I think it was beautifully shot, and you could tell sort of 92, 93, there was some real money being thrown at this program as well. You might tell me otherwise, but
It
it
was
just
the same budget. It was the same budget. Pretty
oh,
much.
okay, maybe just technology had advanced, shall we say,
Yeah.
in terms of special effects.
Yeah, yeah.
You won an Emmy for Gunman of the Apocalypse.
We
Do
did.
you want to tell us a little bit about that?
We were nominated the previous year, and many would argue Quarantine or Back to Reality were certainly as good as Gunmen. But anyway, off it went. It was nominated, and in fact, thrillingly, it won. Weirdly, I couldn't go because I was editing another series at the time for Grant Naylor, the 10 Percenters. So I knew it was taking place in LA in the middle of the night, or was it New York? But it was the middle of the night, whenever it was. So I went to bed not knowing whether we'd won or not. And I'd said to everyone, look, if we win, give me a ring. I don't care what time it is. Give me a ring. Give me a ring. Woke up in the morning. No call. No one's phoned. Oh, we haven't won. So I thought, I wonder what has. So I went through to my office, and the way I found out was on a thing called teletext. I don't know if you even know what.
I know what it is, certainly, yeah.
Okay, so I turned on teletext, and it was BBC headlines, and it was Red Dwarf wins Emmy, and that's how I found out.
Fantastic, fantastic. A bit of a strange question, but do you feel as though there was anything in the show's run that didn't quite land?
The thing is, there are always restrictions that the viewer doesn't see. And so the early sets weren't what we wanted. It started to really take off from, I think, certainly visually from series 3 onwards. went to six. Six was a difficult series to write. Rob wasn't happy. That was our Let It Be album. So he wanted to go off and do his own thing. And then there were two difficult situations. We were doing another series called The 10 Percenters.
Mm.
He wanted to write his scripts on his own, which he did, and the director didn't like them. So he resigned, and leaving me to write four scripts in 4 weeks, which I didn't enjoy very much. And then we had a Red Dwarf novel that was contracted, and he wanted to write separate chapters. So he said, "You write the first three chapters, I'll write the second three." And then I did my chapters, and he had issues. He had writer's block or something. So I wrote six chapters, and then he didn't have anything. So I wound up writing this flipping novel in 3 months. And very cleverly, he then had 15 months to write his. That was not a happy time. And so then we came back for series seven, and the last thing I wanted, well, I didn't feel I was always the one in the edit. Rob very rarely came to the edit.
Mm.
So you make the show in the edit, really, because it's what take you take, blah, 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 blah. There's all sorts. In fact, I remember talking on Back to Reality, phoning him really excitedly, going, "I think this show works now," because we both felt it turkeyed.
Mm.
And I've stripped all the laughs off because he laughed in all the wrong places, and I moved into the right places and blah, blah, blah. And I really think it's working now. You should get down here and have a look at it. But so when he went off and to do a series called Strangers, I was then our agent at the time wanted me to be in charge of Red Dwarf, and I didn't feel I could go, "Okay, I'll write all of them myself." Yeah, so series seven and series eight were kind of bumpier rides, and then that appeared to be it for TV because we were going to make a movie, which I was going to direct.
But of
Then,
course, in the midst of all this, you had the Americans getting involved as well with doing their pilot episode.
yeah, that was just before, that was after series five. We were executive producers, and so we couldn't go over because I was editing series five. So we then went over and we went straight into rehearsals, and they had the script, and it was clearly wasn't very good.
Mm.
And we asked if we could rewrite it. And reluctantly, the showrunner said, "Yeah, but you'll have to rewrite it overnight." So we rewrote it. We started at 4 in the afternoon, and we finished it by 10 the following day.
Did you sleep?
No, no, no. We worked all the way through, all the way
Wow.
through. And it was much, much better than the American written script. And then we didn't realize at the time you get paid a lot of money for writing the pilot of a TV series. We didn't realize that. So don't know whether that's any way connected. None of our rewrite happened.
Start me up. Rolling Bones, as they were in 81.
Indeed.
The Rolling Stones. Tell us why you chose that particular record.
Well, it was 1981. I love the record, and it was sort of the start of my comedy writing career, really.
Mm.
That's when he began slowly, but that was sort of where it started. Pilot was shot the way it was shot, and it was not taken up.
So going back to Red Dwarf, you did Back to Earth for Dave, the TV channel Dave. That is a beautifully put together production, but also how many fourth walls can one person break? You know, tell us what that was like, getting the phone call from Dave, or Dave saying, "We want this," or "Have you got something?"
It was basically Red Dwarf was repeating on Dave and getting really incredible viewing figures, beating everything, including Fools and Horses, everything, Porridge, everything, 40 Towers, everything. And so they came up with the idea of, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if we got the guys back in costume, and then built a little set, and they went, remember that time back in blah 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 when we met that polymorph, and then we play the polymorph clip. And hey, remember that time when we crashed in Starbug and we got marooned, and we play the maroon clip. I was told this, and I said, look, if you're going to get the guys back in costume, and if it's getting really great figures, why don't you commission a new series? And they said, because we don't commission scripted comedy, we're a repeat channel and we're just trying to spice up the repeats. And I said, yeah, but wouldn't it be a really good idea? And they said, we haven't got the budget for it. And I said, if we could somehow make something incredibly cheaply, would you take it? And they went, oh, yeah, actually. And so it was then getting together every bits and pieces we could for free. So I called the guys, they were all interested. And Craig said, if you want to use the Coronation Street set, you can. Don't
Of
know.
course, because he was in it at the time,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
I don't know how that fits, but you can have that. And then someone else said, I did VisFX. I nearly did VisFX for Mike Seymour, he was called. I nearly did VisFX for the Red Dwarf movie. I've got to know you. I really like you. I now run a VisFX school where students make VisFX. If you let me shoot you making this, I will do all the VisFX for free.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, okay. And so we went along collecting bits and pieces like this, and that became, rightly or wrongly, back to earth.
Did you ever think, when from those humble beginnings of those sort of grey corridors and pixelated Norman Lovitts, that it would become the cult phenomenon it's become today?
I honestly thought at the time it would look amazing. I thought it would look like Alien
Mm,
and be just stunning.
yeah.
And it would run for 3 or 4 glorious series, and then that would be it. But then when you saw the first series, it was like I remember saying to Rob, the last thing I want it to do is look like Blake Seven because Blake Seven puts people off. They go, I hate science. Oh my God, look at that. It's so cheesy looking.
Yeah.
Can't possibly
A
be
lot of
any.
quarries and corridor running
Yeah,
and
and
yeah.
and bad ray guns and bad wobbly sets. And so I knew instantly it wasn't going to be the mega hit I thought it would be because it didn't look good enough. Although to be fair, it did go in instantly at number 3, I think it was, with 5.3 million,
Mm.
but then went down through that first series, but then kind of stayed at 2.5 million, and then the repeat got 2.5 million, and then we started to build up with season 2 and 3, and 3 was big,
Do you
big,
know what
big.
I feel as though the BBC missed a trick on there, and it was something that they were doing with Doctor Who to a vast degree, is I don't feel as though the merchandising with Red Dwarf was really there. There were a few bits and pieces. You had the magazines, and there were a few Smoke Me a Kipper t-shirts, and obviously the VHSs came out, but there was so much more scope for Red Dwarf stuff that I craved as a child, and it never happened.
I think it's because in a really strange way we weren't BBC.
Okay.
We were on the BBC, but we weren't BBC. We weren't BBC London because we've been rejected. We were BBC Manchester, and then we were
Ah,
Manchester only for a few series because someone pointed out we all live in London. Why are we rehearsing in London, then having to coach it all the way to Manchester to make the show, and then after the show, cage it all the way back in? Wouldn't we be better making it in BBC London? Oh, sorry, guys, there's no room here. So we then made it in Shepperton Studios
right.
for years and years and years, and we became a little island, just doing what we wanted. So we never got notes, we never got script notes. We could do anything we wanted pretty well. We just deliver the show, and it would go on TV. But
Mm.
because we didn't have, I guess I'm presupposing this, but we didn't have the BBC. We didn't feel like a BBC show to the BBC.
Mm.
We didn't have that.
There were some great books, though. There was some wonderful. I think definitely the 90s. The 90s was the decade of the comedy-related tie-in book 4 series. I think One Foot in the Grave were doing them, Only Fools were doing them. So that I did at the time get all the Space Corps manuals and the Primordial Soup and the Son of Soup, and I thought they were superb. I thought they were absolutely brilliant.
I mean, obviously our favorite things were novels, proper novels.
I loved those
Um,
as well. I loved those
yeah,
as
yeah.
well. I
But that
mean,
was a BBC thing. They wanted us to do the comedy book, and
mm.
we went, no, we don't want to do the comedy book. We want to write a novel because we want to write them like we saw the thing, not how it's been portrayed on TV.
Well, I
Uh,
grew up in a generation of TV and film tie-in novelizations
yeah,
to things, and you would pick it up A because the video hasn't come out yet, B because it's got the same cover as the poster,
yeah,
and C it ain't going to be shown on terrestrial TV for a good 5 or 6 years if it's a brand new film,
yeah.
and they were an excellent coda to take you through until you got the videotape.
Yeah, but because the BBC went, no, no, we don't want you to write a novel. No one writes a novel of a comedy show. No, that's never been done. No. But because the BBC wanted us to do, actually, they didn't even want a novelization. They wanted a wacky, comedy book, like the
Yeah,
not the 9 o'clock news books. And we went, no, 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 we don't want to do that. And then our agent went to Penguin and said, "Do you want? Will you?" And they went, "Yes, please, we'll commission them." And then
mm,
the BBC went, "Actually, we've changed our minds." But by then it was too late. We were with Penguin.
yeah. But they were great fun, though. I think because I was such a fan. I think you could have had pants with Red Dwarf on them, and I would have bought
Yeah,
them quite
yeah,
happily.
sure. Yeah, that needed someone to, to
It's a
be the
real
bit.
shame. It's a real shame. Was there any particular reason Chloe Annette was not invited back to Red Dwarf?
Um, well, she was in Back to Earth,
Hmm.
so she was invited back there. And then I wanted to get back to what I considered to be the winning formula, which was boys in space, not 23-minute shows, but 30-minute shows in that more porridgey kind of way. And I just felt I wanted to give that a try to see if it worked. And it worked so well. We continued that through 10, 11, 12, and Promised Land. Not that Chloe couldn't come back at some point. She absolutely could, but just that's what we were doing at the time.
Mm. And she was such a key figure of the late '90s as well. She was kind of in
Yeah,
everything, you know?
yeah, lovely person. Yeah, she was
Yeah,
great.
yeah. No, she is amazing. And this is the thing as well. You get sci-fi fans or geeks or nerds or whatever you want to call them, a bit like myself, and they, I suppose it's a bit like Star Wars in some respect, is if they can make a movie out of the lamp that was in Return of the Jedi, they will. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And they want to know what happened to peripheral characters or key characters that once were.
yeah.
So, again, the Kachansky storyline is ripe for the picking still, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
Tell us about you've got the new novel out.
I have
Yeah,
Sinbin Island. Sinbin Island.
Simbin Island. Tell us what it's about.
Um, it's I got an idea for a children's book, where sort of 9 to 13s. It's an idea that wouldn't go away. I thought, okay, I'll write the first few chapters, see if I enjoy doing it, and I absolutely loved it, and it became what originally was this giant novel of 104,000 words. Um, Sent to publishers. They felt it was too long and wondered if it could be divided into 2 books. And long story short is that's what's happened, and there'll be more in the series. Basically, the idea is it's a orphanage for wayward boys and girls where the 4 worst behaved kids are banished to Simbin Island, where they have to survive for a week with just bread and water. In days gone by, the island was a prison island, incarcerating witches, smugglers, pirates. And there is a rumor that pirates used to smuggle treasure with magical artifacts through hidden tunnels
Mm.
on the island. And it's basically about the 4 that get sent there and what happens to them.
You've gone with that power of four again, that winning formula of four
Yeah,
people.
absolutely. Yeah, very much based on my experience with except it's two boys and two girls,
Mm.
no robots, no hologram, and instead of science fiction, there's magic. But there are comparisons between science fiction and magic, and the reviews of the thing, the best reviews of my career, I have to
Oh
say.
wow, wow, that's
Um,
amazing.
I mean, Craig absolutely loved it. Frank Cottrell Boyce, who's the children's lawyer, loved it. So many adults actually have enjoyed it, um, um, who are often reading it before they hand it to their kids. So,
And
um,
I hope you don't mind me saying, but you're 69 now, Doug. Is that right?
I am indeed 69.
Yeah. So isn't it wonderful that did you think about yourself as kind of like a 30-year-old writing Red Dwarf that you'd still be at 69 years old, still pumping out these incredible books and this life of adventure?
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing. If I'd have been my own father, I would have said, it's all very well if you ever write a sitcom and you get it on, but what are
Yeah.
you going to do after that? What's your plan after that? Are you just going to write loads and loads of sitcoms, are you?
Mm,
Because, and what are you going to be doing in your 50s and 60s? I wouldn't have had an answer. Just, shut up, Dad. It's a day at a
yeah.
time and see where we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah. So there we go.
And with Sin Bin Island, are you going to be going out on the road and doing any sort of signings or going to any Comic Cons or anything like that?
Yes, I've I've done nothing but for very many weeks, no, several weeks now.
Okay.
That's not something I quite realized how much I would have to do. In fact,
Mm.
this very week, I've got a Zoom tomorrow, then a podcast meeting because I might be doing my own podcast,
Oh,
uh, and then MCM Com in Birmingham for 2 days, and then a Comic Con in Reading, and that's just this week.
so you're going to have lots of people in different coloured Rimmer outfits with H's on their heads saying, "Can you sign this and can you sign that?"
Well, actually, there's getting witches now, witches and smugglers and
Oh, of
pirates.
course, yeah.
Yeah, as well as the odd person with an H on the head. Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah.
well, that's amazing. That's amazing. I used to love going to Comic Cons and Collectomania and things like that. I never dressed up. I purely went there for the retail side of things. And
Right, right. Yeah.
but yeah, just amazing to see some of the costumes and the effort that these people put in.
Oh, amazing,
Yeah,
amazing.
it's wonderful. It is. Someone went one year. This was, I don't know if you remember it, but there was one called Collectomania, and it used to be in Milton Keynes.
Right.
And someone went as the bridal Guelph party
Oh, okay.
from Polymorph 2.
Right. Oh, amazing.
So a full-on Guelph outfit with the veil and the headdress
Yeah,
with a lister.
that's a hot costume as well.
Yeah, yeah. And
Oh,
the lister was a dummy. So it
oh,
wasn't two people. He was just carrying this lister around with it all day.
incredible.
Yeah.
I saw a woman who came in a leather Red Dwarf dress. It was Red Dwarf on its side, as it were,
Yeah.
with Starbucks shoes. Incredible.
I love it. I love the commitment these guys put in. We're going to play out on the infamous chicken song, right? Spitting Image, the chicken song, and all of the records that we've played this evening have some sort of connection, don't they, to this record?
Well,
To a degree.
to a degree, they were records that I loved in the 80s, and then of course the Chicken Song was also in the 80s. Lyrics, yeah, the song was conceived and lyrics written by Rob and I, and bizarrely, of all the songs you've heard this evening, the only song that went to number one in the UK is the masterpiece that many know as the Chicken Song, which just shows how unfair life is.
Doug, don't trust the British public. It's as simple as that. Don't trust them.
Yeah,
We ended up with Brexit and then with the chicken
I know.
song.
It's another kick in the nuts for democracy, isn't it?
We're going to play out on Spitting Image, the chicken song, for the second time because our old friend Michael Fenton Stevens chose it as well. Bless him. Doug Naylor, thank you very much.
Lovely speaking to you, John. Take care.
the time of year now that spring is in